Hey, hello everyone and welcome in a new video. In this video, I'd like to show you how to create your first deployment and some stuff about deployment. In the next video, we will see how to use the deployment and the rollout, very specific part about deployment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss the next video, like and comment this one to support me. So let's go. The deployment is very important in Kubernetes because like I said in previous videos, you never use pod directly or replica set, but always or really many times you use a deployment. So what is a deployment? Deployment, if you remember our Russian dolls, you have the pod, of course, and into the pod you have C groups and namespaces, and in this pod you can have many containers, maybe one, but maybe more, and this pod is managed by the replica set to ensure the number of pods and to ensure the auto healing, of course, because if you kill the pod, if you have an error on this pod, we will see that you can, for example, automatically restart the pod. And you need, of course, to manage a replica set, you need to have stuff around the replica set. And in our case today, we just see the deployment, but in some case you can have a stateful set or daemon set. We will see later, not in this video. So the deployment, of course, have an essential or the main purpose about the deployment is to deploy. So to deploy what? To deploy a replica set, and the replica set deploy, of course, one or many pods. What the deployment provides, for example, one thing is to store versions. For example, if you push one deployment for one pod with a specific image, you can tag, for example, the version 1.0.0, but you want to upgrade it, and what you can do, you can edit, of course, the manifest, the deployment manifest, and into this deployment, you set for this pod and this container the image, for example, for v1.0.0.1, for example, and if you push it, you want to keep the previous manifest, and that allows you, for example, to roll back your current version, your new version, to the previous version to push the v1 0.0.0. And so this is very useful. We will see it in the rollout in the next video. So this is very useful. And the deployment provides you also the strategy. The strategy is how to deploy finally the new version. For example, you can use the rollout or the recreate. The rollout is really useful and current mode to upgrade an image. When you use it, this is really smooth. So each pod is replaced when a new pod is set with a new version. But if you use, for example, the recreate, we'll see in the next video an example. The recreate is just Kubernetes drop all pods for this deployment and push the new one, the new version for the number of to ensure the number of replica. So this is really important to have it in your mind. An example of deployment manifest, of course, you can use the kubectl explain. So, for example, if you want to see, we can use kubectl explain deploy or deployment, for example, and into it you can use, for example, a dash recursive to have more elements into it and to ensure to see all that you can set into the deployment. So you have many things, of course, into it, because you have all things about the pod, all things about replica set, and of course all things about the deployment. So this is crazy, but you can just remove the the hyphen recursive, and you can check it. Here you can see that in the deployment you have, of course, the metadata with the name, labels, annotations, and the kind about, of course, the resource. So in this case, sorry, this is, of course, the deployment. And really important part, this is the specification. So if you can check the specification, if you want to check, you have the specification here, and into specification, of course, you have, for example, the replicas. So replicas is just a part about the replica set. So you remember the Russian doll. You have the deployment. Into the deployment you have a replica set, and into the replica set you have a pod. And into the replica you have other things. So replicas, we already saw that in the previous video, but about the replica set video, of course. But you have other things, because we are in a deployment. We have the revision history limit, so how we want to keep previous version. For example, you can keep only one version, but maybe 5 or 10 versions to allows you to roll back. And after that, you have the strategy. The strategy is, like I said, you can set it to recreate or to roll out. We will see it in the next video. And after that, of course, we are in a replica set. So we are in the deployment, and of course, into it you have a replica set, and you can and you have the template, of course, to have a template about pods. Pod, not pods, but pod. And into a pod you can have, of course, one or many containers. Okay, and how is the manifest about the deployment? This is really simple. This is like a replica set, but like in the replica set, you have in specification, you have the number of replica, you have the selector to select pods that we have into the template here to associate it to our replica set, and of course our deployment. And the really specific part about the deployment is the strategy. Here you can see we have the type here set to rolling update, and we have some specification when we are in rolling update. For example, you can set the rolling update mode, for example, how you want to have more pod with the max surge to execute or to launch your rolling update. Maybe the number of unavailable pod, you can set it here. This is really interesting to have it. If you want to create it, this is really easy. We can create, for example, a directory, for example, deploy directory. I can go into it, and you can use kubectl, of course, kubectl create, and we want to, which kind we want to create. This is a deployment, and the name of our deployment, for example, my deployment, like here, deployment, and you can set directly the image. You can set, for example, here image, set it to Nginx, and after that you can use the hyphen dry run and set it to client like on the pod and the pod one-liner, and into it what we want, we just want to check the YAML file about our manifest, and we can push it directly into, for example, into the deployment.yaml. And if we do that, sorry, kubectl, not cube, yes, like here. And now, if I check what we have into the YAML file, what we have, of course, the deployment, this is the kind, we have some metadata, and of course the name, and the label. By default, this is the same thing like the name, but on the key app, and after that we have the specification. By default we have one replica, but this is to set the replica set, and into it we have the selector based on match labels on the key app and the value my deployment. This is the same thing like the name about the name of the deployment, and into it we can have the strategy. By default, nothing is setted, but this is like we said by default that we want to use the running update mode, and after that the template. This is like in the replica set, because we are in the part of the deployment, and this part of the deployment is to set the replica set inside the deployment. This is really important, so I repeat it, but it's really, really important to have it in your mind. And after that, the template about the template of pods, not pods, sorry, again. And after that, I want to set the metadata about pod, and these pods, because we have only one replica, so this pod is this pod has some labels, and in this label here we have the key app set to my deployment for this pod, and specification about containers inside the pod. So we have only one container here, like you can see. This is a list, but we have only one hyphen here, and we have the image set to Nginx. So this is Nginx colon latest, and the name about this container is Nginx. So what we can do, we can just create this element. So you can just run kubectl apply -f deployment.yml, or if you want to just use this one-liner, you can just remove, for example, here the the dry run and the output. And now we created, we have our deployment in status created, and if we check kubectl get deploy or deployment, this is the same thing because this is an alias. We have our deployment named my deployment, and into this output we have the number of pod. In this case we have only one pod, and one pod is ready on one. But if you have two pods with two replicas, for example, you can yes, maybe we will see it later, but if you have two replica or 10 replica, you can have here 10 and the number of ready pod into this 10 replica. Of course, we want to have 10 ready pods. And after that, the number of up-to-date pod, if you do a rolling update, for example, and the available number of pod, and of course the age. After you can of course use the kubectl describe deployment one-liner, and you want, for example, for your deployment like here, and you have some element. You can see here an event into our Kubernetes cluster, and just one event. So what is this event? We just created the deployment, and this deployment just want to set a replica set. And this replica set is named my deployment, because this is the name of this deployment, hyphen an ID, and this is the ID about our replica set for this deployment. And you can say, so you can see it here. So this is just a scaling replica set. We have some element about our deployment, and you can see here we use the strategy, and by default this is the rolling update strategy, and with some default settings. For example, you see here you can see 25% for max unavailable pods and 25% of max surge element. So we will see it in the next video. And of course, just after that, you can just open the Russian doll with a kubectl get rs for replica set, or replica set if you want to set it directly. Of course, we can find the same replica set like we can see into our deployment. So this is 6F6 here, and the same thing here. So we have the replica set, the desired and the current element, and the ready pod for this replica set. And finally, if you want, you can check the kubectl get pods, and in the kubectl get pod, what we have a pod where the name about this pod is set with the name about our deployment, the ID about our replica set, and the ID about the pod. So if you have many pods, you can have the same pattern here. For example, we will see it later, but if you want, you can use kubectl or rollout, and what we want to, kubectl scale, and what we want to scale, we want to scale our deployment. So you can set deployment here, and my which deployment we want to scale the deployment named deployment in our case, and hyphen the number of replicas, and we want to set this number of replica to, for example, to 10, and I can just pass here 10. And what we have, of course, if I just use kubectl get pods here, we have 10 pods with the same pattern. So the name of the deployment, the replica set ID, and of course a variable here. This is just the ID about our pod. And if you check the kubectl rs for replica set, you have 10 desired pod, and of course the current number of pod is 10, and the ready number of pod, because you can have for example 10 current pod, but all pods are not ready. So if we go fast, of course you can see here in this case we have for example, if we check just before, in this case we could have 10 current, because we have in this case here 10 pods, but ready pod only 9 pods, because one is just in container creating status. Okay, and after that you can, for example, kubectl get deploy to check the deployment, and of course the deployment is 10 on 10 ready, up to date 10, because no upgrade, no rolling update is ongoing, and the available is set to 10. I check here just a summary about the differences between replica set and deployment. So the main thing is just the strategy, we will see it later, and the scale management. The creation, so we already saw that. You can use the kubectl get all. If you want to just check all things, you can use kubectl, or we already saw that we can use an alias if you have a bash alias k get kj, and we want to kget all to see all things into our namespace. So we have here 10 deployment, so we can check the replica set, and in the same time you can set the deployment also. And now, oh yes, you can, if you want to just have a look about specific element about the deployment, this is to upgrade, to update your deployment, and you can use kubectl set image into a specific resource. In our case, this is deployment. You can use the replica set, the name about this resource. So for the deployment, this is, for example, in our case, my deployment, and what we want to set as an image version. So in this case, for example, you can use kubectl set image. So we want to update this image, the tag image, and what we want to set, this is a deployment, and the name of our deployment is my deployment. And after that, the hyphen image, and what we want to set, Nginx, I don't know, 1.9.2 for example. And if we, yes, we don't need to hyphen image because we already use kubectl set image. And if we do that, so the Nginx, the name is good, not found. Set image deployment, okay. Nginx set kubectl set image deployment, okay. My deployment, and we want to set yes, the which element, which container do you want to set? This is really important. This is here the name about the container. Of course, we want to set an image, but for which container? For Nginx container in our case, and we can apply here. And if you check quickly, you can see that we just upgrade here 5 container. So 5 new container replace 5 old container, and the rolling update is just automatic. And in the final step, of course, we have only 10 replicas set for an image with the 1.9.2 version about Nginx. After that, you can just have a look that the deployment provides you the history about our versions. For example, so you can use kubectl rollout, and you can set here the history mode. So you can use kubectl rollout, restart, etc. But in this case, just to have a look quickly, kubectl rollout history about the deployment, name my deployment, and if you check that, you have in this case two revisions. So the first deployment with the version latest about our Nginx, and in the second case, in the second step, we just use a kubectl set image to our deployment to set the new tag to 1.9.2, and this is what we do in the second revision here. And in the next video, we just have a look on how to use this part to roll out and to use history. For example, if you want to downgrade the version and to roll back quickly, this is really useful, and how work how the history work on the deployment. That's it for today. I hope this video is really useful for you. Don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel to support me, like and comment this video. See you in the next one. Bye bye.